So imagine it's 2024, and not even early 2024, but late 2024, not even a year ago, 2024. And if you're someone like me who pays a lot of attention to what's going on in Syria, Iraq, places like this, you will begin to hear reports, interesting reports, that things are changing in Syria. That the battle between the jihadists in Idlib and the government of Syria at the time, the Assad government, are fighting a lot more than normal. But even though it's a lot more than normal, this is Syria, this is the war. Okay, this is normal, kind of, even though it's not normal. But nothing is normal in Syria or in war. So, okay, whatever. It's whatever. But then something changes. The jihadists move the front line, and somehow they make it to Aleppo. And you begin to think, huh, hmm, even though you're actually thinking, oh my God, is this really happening? And yes, it's really happening. They take over Aleppo. They take over all the other cities. They take over Damascus. They take over the capital. Assad is gone. He flew on an airplane to Dubai or Moscow or wherever. There is no more Syrian government. And if you're someone like me who is actively studying the history of this area, you're thinking, oh, this is new. This is different. This is something that maybe could help me. Even though I was also thinking of all the people I know in Syria and I was hoping for their safety and everything like that, I was also thinking a little bit, oh, huh, huh, because I am studying a region of Syria that is not now, but at that time, one of the most dangerous regions of the world. I'm not studying the current situation there, but I was studying the history of that region. But the problem is because that area was so dangerous, I couldn't do any, what can I say, contemporary research on this area. Like even now, of course, I cannot go to Afrin, Syria. I cannot go there because it's dangerous. Maybe I would get kidnapped or maybe not, but why would I want to find that out? So for sure, I'm not going there. And at the time, I couldn't even, for example, speak to anyone about the history of their villages or even if they weren't in Afrin, maybe they would be living here in Germany, maybe they'd be living in Turkey, something like that. But even speaking about this region could be very, very dangerous for them or for their families living in Afrin. So I was kind of in this bind before because I'm studying this region, but there's almost no academic resources about this region, first of all. Second, if I want to find out about it, I have to actually ask the people that live there about the history of their village, of their region, of their state or whatever in Afrin. And I couldn't really do this because it would be dangerous for them if I did this. But now that there's a new government in Syria, this might change things. And actually, it turns out that I wasn't the only one that was thinking this. There were other people out there thinking, ah, hmm. And these people were not historians, not any that I know anyway. They were actually the people that used to live in Afrin. Maybe now they're living in Europe somewhere or Turkey. And what they're thinking is, I bet I could go back to my village now. I bet it'll be safer now. I bet I could visit and see what happened to my village. And there were some people that started doing this. And so they will begin to film people doing stuff. People, for example, picking olives or people just hanging out outside of their house, talking, enjoying life a little bit. And they'll go with their car and with a microphone and just out of nowhere, just start interviewing people and saying, hey, could you like tell me about this village a little bit? And for me, this changed everything. It changed everything. I am no longer like scrappy, like looking for tiny pieces of information. I now have so much information. Now, these people that are going to these villages, they are not going to show only the history of Afrin. Mostly they are showing what these villages are up to now. But history is very important for the elders of these villages. And for Kurds in general, I've noticed history can be important to them. So luckily, they go to the elders like out of respect a lot and just out of curiosity. And they will ask, like, can you tell me what you know about your village? And the elders will often they do know about their village and they will say the history a little bit. And by now, hundreds and hundreds of these videos have been made, which is really, really nice for me. So what this means is I can take these hundreds and hundreds of videos and look for specific pieces of information. And I didn't even know what I was looking for at first. This was just like, it was like a gold mine, but I'm the only miner. It's like all this gold and like no one really realizes it that I can use that it can be used for this for historical projects. And what I'm doing now is a historical project about the oral history of Afrin, and I just picked a really lucky time to start doing this project. So now I switched everything, all of my research methods and all my plans, and I went and I honed in on these YouTube videos, on these channels, which are producing like a grand total, let's say, of 1,000 YouTube videos. And I've summarized these all into English. And I'm looking through them. Like, there's a lot, obviously, to look through and read through. Most of these videos are 20 minutes to 40 minutes long. It's a lot of stuff to get through. But I began to notice certain things that were really interesting. But the thing that really caught my attention was that these villages, most of them had a starting point of about 500 years ago, which is really, really interesting because this region is much older than 500 years ago. It is way older. This is the Middle East. This is where civilizations were created, including in this region. So why? Why is everyone saying that in their village, they say, well, yeah, I don't know, maybe like 500 years ago, things were built, but they don't really, they kind of a lot of times they know what they're talking about like it, but the way that they speak, it's always like, I don't know, like, 500 years ago, 500 years ago. And some people were saying 400 years ago, some people even were 350 years ago, but it was always this time frame that started around the late 1500s. And I was looking at all kinds of other information. I wasn't really focusing so much on this 500 years ago thing, but it just kept coming up over and over again. And I began to notice this pattern. And this got me really interested. Why? Why 500 years ago? I mean, the actual buildings themselves are older than 500 years a lot of times. Like the actual village is older than 500 years, but the new village that was on top of that village, this is the Middle East. This is how things work. The new village goes on top of the old village. And that new village, that newest version of the village, very often started 500 years ago. And this got me really curious. So I started researching this. Why this? Because these elders that were talking in Afrin, they didn't say why. They didn't say how the village was created. Sometimes they did. Sometimes they did. But mostly they did not. They just said, oh, this village goes back 7 generations, or this village goes back 500 years ago. So I didn't know why. Why? So I went through the normal process. I thought about the Crusaders. No, way too late. Mongols, way too late. Like these kind of empire changes or massive wars or something like this. But there was nothing like that. In this region, there was nothing like that around 500 years ago. So what was it? So I did more research, and what I found was really, really interesting. So let's get into it. All right. So first of all, I would like you to know I am wearing a different shirt. Also, This is the information that I took from the hundreds of YouTube videos. I think this specific graph that I made automatically with a Python program um, is about 650 or 700 data points. Like basically 650 times or 700 times that someone said this village was created at this time. And almost always, like 99% of the time, they never said the year that it was created. They always said around how many hundred years ago. So, yeah, like 350 years ago, 500 years ago, this kind of thing. Now, as I said before, things are kind of wishy-washy with the creation dates of these villages. As you can see here, there are really, really old dates here. And a lot of this is because a lot of people said um, this village has been here since for like, I don't know, since the time of the Romans or like something like that. Uh, Maybe from 1,000 years ago. And they wouldn't be wrong by saying that because the newer iteration of villages were built on, oftentimes anyway, built on older um, iterations of villages that can go back for thousands and thousands of years, not just 2,000 years ago, but even older. And so it's hard to know sometimes what they're talking about when the person says this village is how many years old, because there are newer iterations of villages built on the older iterations. So what I'm trying to talk about is the newer iterations of villages. And there seems to be two different periods that this happens. One is this stuff, and I don't know too much about what's going on here. And the other is so obvious, it's this stuff here. So more than 80 times, for example, people were saying in the 1700s. But again, they weren't saying 1700s, they were saying like uh, 320 years ago or even 500 years ago, this kind of thing. So each one of these is a 50-year time period in which the village elder or someone like that said that their village started. And again, their village, often they'll say, yeah, our village started on the older village, and it started 500 years ago, something like that. So as you can see here, these are the dates. And of course, I wouldn't like think that it happened exactly at the year 1500 to 1549. These dates are really wishy-washy, but obviously something was going on in this time period, especially with these three big ones, which are about 500 to 300 years ago. So now the question is, what? What was going on 500 to 300 years ago where suddenly all these villages were beginning to become created? Something was happening. But what was it? So this is what I found. This is what I found is one of the major things that happened not only in Afrin, but all over the Ottoman Empire, especially Anatolia, which is now basically Turkey, which is basically where Afrin is. Afrin's right on the Syrian border. Uh, on the other side of that border is Turkey. So what happened before all of these villages were starting to be created was some really bad stuff in the Ottoman Empire. And Afrin was in the Ottoman Empire, deeply in the Ottoman Empire at this point. And yeah, so basically what happened is a lot of bad stuff. And then after this bad stuff is when you see the creation of these villages. But to understand this bad stuff that happened, you have to understand the climate that was going on. And also, you will begin to understand why, even during this bad stuff happening, is when there was such a influx. So many villages were starting to be created after really bad things happened, and sometimes even during. So let's get into it. Uh, Basically, things were so bad in the Ottoman Empire in this time. you can boil down like the categories of these bad things that happen into the four horsemen of the apocalypse. And here I decided to do that. So here we have, I don't know the names of the four horsemen, but these are like the categories basically. So we have disaster, bad things that happen to resources, bad things that happen with economics, really bad things that happen with climate, disease, demographics, politics, unrest, and war. And as someone who studied political science, I would always look at the war first, at the politics first, maybe unrest, maybe demographics, like going from right to left here. But actually, what I think was really happening was something more going from left to right, especially having to do with the climate. And this is the case that Sam White makes in his book. Maybe I can zoom up a little bit more here. On Sam White's book, The Climate of Rebellion in the Early Modern Ottoman Empire. And he has a whole book about this and how all of this stuff can be tied into the climate and the really bad climate that was happening during this time. And it's not something that a lot of historians have looked at yet, especially in regards to the Ottoman Empire. But now that we have obvious changes in the climate now, I think people are looking more and more into climate being a major factor in unrest and politics and war and all of this other stuff. So this is the argument Sam White makes, and this is the argument that I will make. I think it makes a lot of sense in this circumstance. So to understand what was going on, you have to understand that something not normal was happening with the climate during this time period, 1560 to 1720, and also later. I think all the way until 1850, and also before. I'm not sure. I can't remember, but it doesn't matter. What matters is things really took a turn for the worse in the climate in this little ice age around 1560. And that's when I start my poster of doom for the Ottoman Empire. So starting in, let's see if we can zoom up a little. Starting in 1560 to 1590, we have erratic climate swings. And this is really when things start to get bad with the Little Ice Age. Before this, it's really important to know that before this, the Ottoman Empire was doing really well. The population was booming, and there was so much like population growth in the Ottoman Empire, including in Afrin, probably, and lots of other places throughout the Ottoman Empire. Lots of crops were being grown more than before. There was abundance. There was population booms. There was lots of land that people could just take and farm and become rich and enjoy their life. Now we get to the end of that time period. It lasted for about 50 years or so, maybe 40, 50 years. And now we're at the end of it. Now the reckoning comes. So now we have all of this huge population boom. Like the generations before were becoming like had an abundance. They were becoming rich. They were enjoying life. But then now there's like not as much land, not as much space. Also, as I keep saying, the climate takes a turn for the worse. Things get a lot colder. And for the Ottoman Empire, what that means is things get a lot drier. It's possible that in England and places like that, things actually got wetter. Maybe there was more rain. But for the Ottoman Empire, things became dry. And right away, things become bad once things become colder. You have drought, and you must understand that in this time period, and pretty much any time before modern times, even now a little bit, but in pre-modern times, when there was a drought, that meant there was no food, because when there's no water, there's no plants. There's there's no plants to eat. There's no plants for the animals to eat, and it's not like you can just get grain from China or from I don't know, Egypt or America. Like you don't have all of these places in the world, and you don't have all the modern shipping and infrastructure and fertilizer and science. No, like no rain, no food, you die. And it's like as simple as that. So these droughts, these are not like, oh, it's too bad. I guess things aren't going well. No, this means villages are starving to death when there's a drought. So there was a drought in the Greek islands and Egypt. Very soon after that, in the Balkans, in Western Anatolia. And anytime I say Anatolia, you can just imagine Turkey, basically. There was drought and famine in the south of Anatolia, in Syria, and you can see it just keeps going and going. Famine, drought, uh, and also because the weather is changing, it has like mood swings kind of. And for different reasons, this also, you get drought somewhere, you also get floods in different situations. So in here, Sofia, for example, this is like Bulgaria, you have major floods. And this, of course, is going to destroy all the crops and villages and everything as well. Then, when you have droughts and famine, this makes people's immune system worse. Obviously, like you don't have food to eat, you're going to become sick already. But if there's some sickness coming through, there's going to be plagues and there's going to be epidemics, things like this, not just for people, but for animals as well. So the animals that do survive, they're also going to die from disease. And the people that do survive, they're not going to have the animals to eat anymore either. Another reason why there's these plagues is people are leaving their villages and they're walking around. They're going to other places. And so if they had some disease, then they're going to give it to other people too. And again, all of these people are immune compromised. Like they don't have the strength to fight any disease that they get. So it's really easy for diseases and plagues to spread. And I'm not talking about corona. I'm talking about diseases and plagues that kill like a third of the people, half the people sometimes. Then you have other stuff when there's disruptions in the weather or just because you have locusts sometimes. So here we have these locusts. So yeah, things are not going well at all within these like 20 years already. And just imagine 20 years of this happening. But it gets worse. It gets worse. So let's go back to some bad stuff that happens before we talk about the politics and unrest and the war. Uh, we really need to understand what's going on with the climate. So obviously, there's in Constantinople, the capital of the Ottoman Empire, there's provision shortages. Uh, yeah, and then it gets worse. The Little Ice Age actually intensifies. And one of the reasons why it intensifies is because of these volcanoes that are blowing up. What happens is the volcano blows up and it puts all this dust in the atmosphere, and this dust reflects the sunlight, and the sunlight is not coming and warming the earth as much, which creates this kind of intense ice age stuff, which in turn dries up the regions, which in turn creates droughts, which in turn creates famine, creates diseases, and the bugs go crazy, and all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, this goes on and on. It's like a cycle that just goes on and on. And actually, we have this cycle here. And if you want to get into it, yeah, let's get into it. So, basically, what we have here is we have the Little Ice Age. And these are the things that are directly created by the Little Ice Age down here, too. So, the death of livestock, obviously, maybe from the cold, maybe from disease, whatever. You have harvest failure from drought. You have malaria and locusts. Again, this is from Sam White's book, so he wasn't exactly sure if it was like the locusts were truly because of the climate change or if it was just because he's more of a historian. He doesn't know about bugs as much, I guess. But this malaria, we'll get back to this actually. Then we have death from cold and related illnesses. Obviously, it's cold. People get cold and sick and die. Um, this harvest failure will also create death of livestock because there's not as much plants for the livestock to eat. Also, people are killing the livestock more to eat them. Then there's the peasants abandoning the land, which is obvious. Like if they can't grow things on it and they need to eat, they're gonna leave. Maybe later we'll get into it, but basically, when the peasants abandon the land, uh, they're not they're not creating the water, like flowing water that goes to their fields as much. So the infrastructure to focus this water and make it flow, it gets broken over time, and the water becomes more stagnant, which means it creates like swampy land. And this will create a lot more situations in which malaria will exist, and that will also kill people. Um, this also, obviously, there's going to be a breakdown in public order if everyone's running away from their villages and getting sick and dying a lot. Um, and then we have famine, we have the refugee conditions, and people are now going to the cities because in the cities they don't have to grow food, basically. They're like trying to find some other lifestyle to have. So they go to the cities, which also creates a breakdown in public order because there's now an influx of all these new people and not enough housing and stuff like that. Um, then it also creates like more food shortages because they're abandoning their land. And also, this is a huge thing. They are not only bringing diseases to their urban areas, but they are also getting sick themselves because they are being introduced to new diseases. If you grow up all of your life in the village and then you go to a totally new area, you're going to get all the diseases of that new area. And these diseases might be stronger in urban environments. They're like super diseases in urban environments because they're unsanitary. Um, very like much more unsanitary than the village. So people were dying a lot from that as well. Then going to the famine and nutrition and malnutrition caused by the death of livestock, caused by harvest failure, caused by people abandoning their land. There's definitely going to be a drop in fertility and definitely going to be diseases. And there's one more thing that isn't talked about that much, but maybe if we go to this side of the poster, we will see it a little bit more. So here we have a more simplified version. Basically, it's this kind of cycle of just bad things that happen because of all the things that are happening in this time period. Uh, so you have decreased production of subsistence foods, which in turn creates a reversion to pastoralism or nomadism. Basically, people are leaving their farms, and so other people are coming, and the sheeps and goats from these like nomadic people are eating whatever's left of the farms, first of all, because no one's there to stop them. But also, they're not farming themselves. They have a different lifestyle. So they're reverting to this other lifestyle sometimes, or maybe new people are coming. This also, there's a deterioration in security in the countryside for obvious reasons. Like people are leaving, it's a chaotic situation. Maybe there's just not very many people there, including the police, for example. This obviously will lead to a population decline because of everyone is running away. Maybe some people are dying in bandit raids and stuff, but mostly people are just running away. And all of this creates the situation of everything else. So there's a population decline, which means there's also a deterioration in security in the countryside, which means there's going to be more population decline, etc. This creates a situation where people go to the urban centers, the cities from the countryside, which also, if you think about it, this also creates a population decline, not only because people are starving, people are getting sick. I mean, the population decline could just mean people are dying, but there's something more. This chart is from 1560 to 1720. This is 150-year or more time period. And what's going on is when people move to cities, they don't have as many children for whatever reason. There's a lot of reasons for this. But this was happening even hundreds of years ago. When people were moving to the cities, they weren't having as many children. So there's also a population decline because of that, which means there's not as many people to farm if they could farm in the first place, but they're in cities anyway. But anyway, that's the population decline here. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. And let's go back now to this because this is really important. If you can see, if you notice here, for about 20 years, really bad stuff was going on uh, because of the Ice Age. This book and this theory, it really focuses on the Ice Age. Maybe there was other stuff. Maybe there were political things going wrong and stuff. But this argument is basically everything boils down to it begins with the Ice Age. It begins with the climate. Um, so if you can see here, things were actually going kind of okay, even though the climate was going really bad, even though there were all the plagues and locusts and droughts and famines, somehow things were still kind of okay in general in the empire. You see here in 1570, the Ottomans were actually gaining more territory during this time. Uh, they took Cyprus, basically. They did have a defeat against Venice, but they rebounded really quickly. They rebuilt their fleet, and they it wasn't like some big horrible major thing that happened. They were able to rebound from it. Uh, as things get worse, there was more wars with Persia, which is in the east of the Ottoman Empire. And it's only when it's like when things don't get better, when things actually get worse, that you see these political things happening that getting worse, like really bad things. So as we talked about, there were volcanoes. Maybe that had something to do with the intensity of the ice age, which only made further droughts and famines and blah blah blah, uh, which only further made more diseases. And it's only until around 1603 or so that you really have a major mass exodus. For sure, I'm sure people were leaving because of all this nasty stuff that was happening, but there's a really big exodus here in 1603 to around 1610. Why? It's because of this. This is when things are really showing, like on an empire-wide level, that things are not going well. This is all happening basically in Anatolia. And first of all, yeah, you get some lawlessness and banditry. You even have a mutiny of the Janissaries, which was a really big deal. They had never mutinied. The Janissaries are like the super elite soldiers of the Ottoman Empire. Um, and basically, what this lawlessness and banditry is what you imagine, first of all, and something you might not think about, which is you have these tax collectors. And these tax collectors go to the different villages all across the empire and they say, okay, time to give the Ottoman Empire its taxes, which could be in the form of crops, of livestock, things like that, grain maybe. Um, but this is the 1500s, and the Ottoman Empire is huge. And in a lot of these places, you don't know if the person really is the tax collector or not. But maybe if they have a gun, you don't really have a choice anyway. So it could be bandits posing as tax collectors. And what's interesting is it could be real tax collectors, but they're kind of a little bit in some way posing as bandits. Maybe they're asking more for what they should be asking. But because they're the empire, because they have guns, if you're a farmer, what can you do about it? So this was not good, of course. And also, it could lead to people getting so poor that they just join the bandits themselves. And then they become these fake or corrupt tax collectors themselves. So it's like this mini endless cycle that happens. And things, it wasn't getting better in this regard. And the tipping point, the really bad thing that happened was the sheep. Ah, here it is. The sheep. It was the sheep. This is what kicked everything off. So in 1596, because of all this bad stuff happening, all this bad stuff and all this bad stuff, uh, the Ottoman Empire was having a war, and they needed more sheep because they didn't have enough sheep because of all the bad stuff. So instead of saying like, okay, I guess like I understand no one has sheep because all the sheep are dead from all the sheep epidemics, from all the bad stuff that we talked about, the Ottoman Empire did what it often did, which was just say, "You have to do it anyway. You don't have sheep, find sheep. You do it anyway." So they had this crazy, crazy demand of 472,000 sheep to basically continue things as they were in the war. And whoever it was that made this decision just like acted like they didn't care that all this bad stuff was happening. And it had a really negative effect on the countryside, which was people, they couldn't do it. They couldn't give the sheep, even if they could, that meant that they would die, they would starve to death. They were already being hounded by the bandits, by the corrupt tax collectors. They just couldn't do it anymore. So there were uprisings. And actually, right before this, something really interesting happened, which was in 1596, the same year that this happened, in the summer, a comet appeared, and it was largely interpreted by the experts at the time as a sign of impending doom. And they weren't wrong. Look at what happened. It definitely was doom. Doom happened, and this comet was warning people. So yeah, here's what happened. Something called the Jalali. This is a Turkish or Kurdish j sound. So the Jalali rebellion was basically people just doing what you would imagine, which was rebel against the Ottoman Empire. And you had like eventually tens of thousands of these rebels just running around the countryside. I could be wrong. I don't know too much about exactly what happened during the rebellion, but it sure seems like they didn't exactly have a plan, at least in the beginning. They just had nothing to lose. So they just took up arms and refused to give the sheep, first of all, but also just realized they had guns now too. They can steal food from other people or steal money, or so it was pretty chaotic, whatever was going on exactly. This guy, Kara Yazıcı, he became one of the main leaders of this. And as you can see here, he later froze to death. This was one of the turning points of the rebellion, actually. This is this is a cold time. Everything that's happening is because of the cold. And this just shows it right here. So you can see in these years, things really got bad. I was going to say they got hot in this cold time, but they got bad. They really heated up, but in a cold way. And yeah, so in 1603, there was even an independence movement in Syria. Now, keep in mind, this is not an independence movement. This is just like people saying, we had enough. I have guns now. I'm not going to give my taxes anymore. I'm going to actually steal things from the other people who don't have guns because I can do it now. And yeah, so basically, there was this rebellion in this time. And something that we need to know about is that one of the reasons why this rebellion could happen was because of the wars that were going on. So all of these soldiers that could be fighting against the rebels and suppressing them, they were fighting in this war that doesn't sound good at all, the Long War. And this is different than War with Persia. War with Persia was probably like, yeah, we always don't like those guys. We're always fighting them. Maybe you can imagine a little bit like the situation with Israel and Iran, like something kind of like that, maybe more heavy than that, but basically like there's always fighting, but whatever. It's not like big war. The Long War was more of a big war, and this war was against Europeans in the I don't know. It's this whole complicated thing, but basically in Hungary, and uh, it was fought until 1606. So during this time of the Long War, uh, people there weren't enough soldiers to fight uh, the Jalali rebels here or Karazaji. So it was only until afterwards that when this war ended, and even not immediately, but finally it was able to be suppressed in 1608 by this really brutal general, and he just basically suppressed it by killing everyone. And I mean, that's one way to stop something from happening. Just kill everyone there. Um, so yeah, so that's what happened. So this is 1608 now. And if you remember the graph that I had before, this was around the time when all of these new villages started to be created. But as you see here, this is still in the middle of this chaotic time, and people are still moving. Like here and later, they're going to the cities still because things are just so bad in the countryside. Um, but my theory of what happened is this box I made, which is basically because of the rebellion, because of the famines before that, and because of this brutal general that just killed everyone at the end, there was almost nobody in Afrin anymore. Almost nobody in this area anymore. This stuff was not only happening in Afrin, by the way. It was happening all over the area that Afrin is inside, like Anatolia, this kind of area. But part of that was Afrin, and here there's this. It's not a big part of the book, and it's not something that I can find too much about yet. It's a research project I'm doing right now. But basically, you have new people moving into this now empty area. Uh, these people, right now, Afrin is almost all Kurdish. But these people were not only Kurdish. You have Bedouins, which is like maybe now they'd be called Arabs. You have Turkmen, who now are a different kind of people than Turkish people, but I don't know at the time. But you have these different people, and where are they coming from? I'm not exactly sure. I'm guessing from this here, this Persian invasion. In this case, this doesn't exactly mean the Persian military invaded. This just means people from Persia saw all this empty land and they just went for it and took it. Kind of like in America, you had the people from the east, and they realized there's all this empty land. I mean, not completely empty, but like very emptied land, emptied from all of the diseases and things that the Native Americans had, and there just weren't very many Native Americans left. And so either they were easy to, how can I say it, kill, like just like eradicate, to put it very, very bluntly, or there just weren't very many people living there. So settlers from the east, like American government settlers, came and could settle those areas. And maybe that's what was happening from Persia. There's a story of a village that I was recently researching where the elders of the village said that around this time period here that I'm talking about, there were some people living in the village, but they are not the descendants of those people because their descendants killed everyone in the village and took over the village. And I assume this happened more than in one village, but this story is remembered more in this village. This is my theory that this happened a lot, where you had a very weak defense or not very many people, and new people came and they could kill those people and take over. For sure, not always, not every single time, but it's something that could happen, I think. And it's something that at least one time did happen. So why not in other villages too? So yeah. So basically, you have people from, I'm guessing, what's the east, maybe now Iraqi Kurdistan or parts of Iraq, also Persia, also parts of northern Turkey, maybe like this kind of area, coming in and taking over, taking empty land, taking mostly empty land, uh, maybe killing people, maybe integrating with people, this kind of stuff. So yeah, that is probably why, starting around 500 years ago, the villages were being created. Um, as we continue, we can see that things still are really bad. This is still the really intense period of the Ice Age, of the Little Ice Age. We have more severe recurring droughts. Things got so bad in 1621 that the Bosphorus, which is the area between Europe and Asia, basically what now Istanbul or Constantinople is built upon. There's now a couple of bridges going over it, but this it froze. Like this doesn't normally freeze there. This is the Middle East. It's warm, but it actually froze in 1621, and it just got cold all the time. Cold, cold, cold. Yeah. Then something else that interesting that happened is you have something called the Maunder minimum. The Maunder minimum was a time when there weren't very many sunspots. And what I mean is 1,000 times less sunspots. So you had 50 in this period here. Wow, from here to here. And normally there would have been 50,000 in that time period, but only 50 were observed. So possibly that meant less solar activity, which could also contribute more to this little ice age. Um, yeah, you have all kinds of things, locusts, droughts, more volcanoes, more plagues, more famines. Oh, yeah, and of course, everyone moved to the cities, and then there were earthquakes, and earthquakes maybe in LA, San Francisco, places like that. It just means you were scared for a few minutes here and there, but people built the buildings in a way that they don't fall down. That's not what happens in a lot of the world. As I mentioned before, actually, a lot of the villages in Afrin now are heavily damaged because of an earthquake that happened in 2023. So yeah, when earthquakes happen, which happen a lot in Anatolia and Istanbul, these places, they're really bad. Like tens of thousands of people die, unfortunately. I believe there's some earthquake that happened uh, where, yeah, anyway, yeah, so you have volcanoes, you have earthquakes. There was a fire that destroyed two-thirds of Constantinople and it killed 40,000 people. And there were also before that 30,000 people, and the water was broken. Then you had another earthquake, another tens of thousands of people. Yeah, the past is no joke. Like, it was really easy to die, and when things go bad, things can get worse real fast. So, yeah. One more thing that I really want to focus on is this figure here. And this is in 1640. The Ottoman Empire did some kind of census. I don't know if it was an official census, but they did some kind of investigation. And it showed an 80% drop in rural households since the 1580s. And the 1580s were the beginning of the bad times. So, and it wasn't just that. It wasn't just this one survey. You had travelers, like European travelers, that would go through Anatolia and just say, there's no one here. Like, there's all these villages and they're empty and destroyed, and there's just nobody. Like, they go for days and days without meeting a single person. Like, you go now in the Middle East, you can go for maybe 10 minutes at the most without meeting a single person. Maybe in the desert, but you'll still find people out there. But so this is really intense. Yeah, like 80% of rural households there were declined. So obviously, this was not a time when villages were being created, but maybe directly after that. If there's 20% of the people left, that means this whole other group from Persia and these kind of places can swoop in and do whatever they want, basically. So yeah, you have all kinds of sad things that happen, like the Sultan is ordering people to go back to the villages, but it doesn't work. Like, it just, things were just really breaking down. As things get worse politically, you have the first time that basically there was a coup. We'd call it a coup now, where the Janissaries killed or maybe mutinous soldiers. I don't know which. They killed the Sultan, and then they do it again. Like I don't know, 30 years later or so, 20 years later. Like, things are not going well for the Ottoman Empire until around here. Things 1720, things begin to get a little bit better. And you will see that in my graph, how that's like the one of the higher points of when the villages are being created. So yeah, I didn't go through this entire poster. There's a lot to go through here. I will give a link to view this poster if you want. And also, very soon, I will put out a website that has even more information than this poster, which I used to make this poster. But if you want to get this poster, you can get it for free on my website. It's ZachariahHopkins.com. And also, I will put a link into another website, AfrinArchive.com, which is another project of mine, where you can download this poster. And if you're interested more in this, Sam White's book is excellent. The Climate of Rebellion and the Early Modern Empire. I believe it was written in 2011. It talks about this obviously much, much, much more in depth, and it's a fascinating read. So yeah, I hope you like my little story of what happened during the Ottoman Empire. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. I'll be making a lot more videos like this in the near future. So until then, stay warm this winter, and I will see you next time.